Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Commissioner. We have about 22 attendees on watching, just waiting. We'll wait for 2 more minutes. Commissioner McDonald, you there also?
Hey, how are you? I'm doing
Hey,
great.
Commissioner, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
I see your name, but we don't see your face yet, so we'll just need your camera on.
Well, my camera's on and I can see my face, so I'm looking for advice then.
All right, let's see.
Let's see. I can see my face. I can't see anyone else's face, though.
Jim, try the drop-down menu on your video
Yeah?
where it says stop video. Just try the drop-down and see if there's an
Yep.
issue with your settings.
See if you've chosen the correct camera that you're on.
Yeah, I've only got one. It's the integrated webcam. Let me I don't know what to tell you. Let me come out and come in again.
All right, let's try that. Everyone else who's on, we're just waiting for the Health Commissioner, but we have DEC Commissioner Basil Sagos. We'll have Health Commissioner Dr. James McDonald. They'll give an update on the air quality. When they are done speaking, I'll have you raise your hands to ask questions. I'll have you unmute and do it just like we did yesterday.
Hey, Jeff, I'm just checking my video now. Can you see me?
I cannot.
All right, well, I'm just going to
see
use
your
my
name.
phone.
Okay.
I'll just use my phone.
So Commissioner McDonald, are you going to flip over to your phone for video?
I'm working on it as fast
cool.
as I can.
Great. And the reporters who are on here, just reiterate, we'll start this in a couple minutes. Just wait for a few more people to hop on, but we have both DEC Commissioner and DOH Commissioners here. They'll talk about the air quality. When they're done, you can raise your hands and I will moderate the question and answer session. And I will record this and I will send it out as quickly as it can upload, because at least for the TV stations, I know you're on a tight deadline for whichever newscast you're using this for.
Jeff, I wondered if you could see me now.
We can. If you can turn your camera sideways, you'll fill the screen better instead of being up and down. There you go. Much better.
Okay, just I can't see what you can see. Does it look okay?
You look beautiful.
It's hard to believe.
Actually tilt up a little bit so that your head's not cut off.
Tom Puckett's got a note in the chat.
I am hearing both commissioners, so I don't think there's an issue, but when I record Tom, it'll be fine. All right, I'm going to start recording. So I am recording now. And Commissioner Sagos, why don't you take us away?
Great, Jeff, thank you. Again, Basil Sagos, DEC Commissioner, and we got Dr. James McDonald, Commissioner of the Department of Health. So we're here to give you today an air quality update for today, Wednesday, and looking into Thursday. Governor Hochul has put out a series of announcements today through social media and through her press office. Encourage you all to look at that for some of the actions the state is taking. We'll talk primarily about what we're seeing in the air right now and what we're expecting in the next couple of days. And then I'll flip it over to Commissioner McDonald to talk about some of the health issues. Current readings right now show some impacts to Western New York, Buffalo at about 164 on that scale, that AQI scale. Syracuse 102, Albany 44, and then New York City down under 50. Lots of green downstate currently. You see, really, this is a Midwest event that's moving into the New York area. You see very high readings still plaguing Chicago, Minneapolis, Detroit, and really Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, surprisingly as well, Maryland and Washington, D.C. So you see a bit of movement from north to south along the Ohio River Valley and into the Appalachian area. That's likely to then hook around into New York, both get some pressure into New York from the west as well as potentially from the south. So we're looking ahead to tomorrow. As the governor announced a short time ago, DEC and DOH have issued an air quality health advisory for tomorrow, Thursday. That is a statewide advisory. We expect the highest smoke concentrations to be Western New York, Eastern Lake Ontario, Central New York, and the Adirondack regions. Those are going to be the areas that are going to have the unhealthy air. That's in that 151 to 200 range. So again, that's unhealthy for everyone, not just for the populations that are sensitive. The rest of the state is going to be in that 101 to 150 category. Again, that's the unhealthy for sensitive groups. There will be, as we've seen, again, short-lived spikes, above the forecasted ranges. So, of course, keep an eye on that. Friday, of course, 2 days out, a little bit more uncertainty. The smoke is out there. If you're watching any of the forecasting nationally, the smoke has been sitting in place and dissipating quite slowly. And we expect that plume to move into the state a bit more quickly than it moves out of it. So we're looking, of course, at the upcoming weekend, the Friday weekend, the Independence Day weekend. And we'll be putting out more information as we get it, but we will likely see the impacts of smoke through Friday at least. Do encourage everyone to follow airnow.gov or go to dec.ny.gov. The airnow.gov information is based on DEC's meteorological stations. Quick note on the fires themselves, of course, continuing to burn. As I mentioned yesterday, the governor has announced that DEC is sending another crew up to fight fires in Quebec. We don't have an exact location yet, but they have mobilized and they're heading north right now. The DEC is going to be leading a crew of 20. We're going to be augmented by members from Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, as well as a couple of members from FDNY. So thank you, New York City. This is the third group now that we've sent to Quebec, and probably not the last. So with that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner McDonald.
Yeah, thank you so much, Commissioner Segoe. So yeah, this is Dr. Jim McDonald, the Commissioner of the New York State Department of Health. Again, very thankful that you're with us today. So, what we said was going to happen for much of New York State, where we see the air quality is really, diminished quite a bit. And I think these air quality numbers are still quite new to people. Quite frankly, we've just been used to pristine air for so long. But what we're seeing is numbers in the red zone, that 151 to 200 number in certain parts of the state. And that's where people often feel it. And the reason I say they feel it is, I think since people are still getting used to this, they may not always be wearing a mask. And they may not be, being outside more than they should be. So people are starting to notice. And I think this is one of the main things we want to get across is that you can't see the difference in the air necessarily. Oh, sure, sometimes you might notice a difference. But you really do want to look at your phone a little bit. And I have this AirNow app. I like this on my phone, the AirNow app. I happen to keep track of all New York because as a state health commissioner, I really need to. So I have an idea of what's going on. If people really need to go outside during unhealthy air, which I hope they don't, but if they do, then I really need folks to grab an N95 mask. I carry an N95 mask with me because I'm going to be in different parts of the state, so I want to be prepared. And I'm trying very hard to be inside. And fortunately for me, I get to be inside air-conditioned buildings. I do want to underscore, if you're going to be inside, you have to keep your windows closed. If you have an air purifier, that can be a wonderful thing to use as well. But I think our two main tools are look at the Air Now app and then carry an N95 if you must go outside. If people are wondering about health impact of this, we aren't really seeing a health impact yet, because keep in mind, this just started today. So we do keep surveillance for these things, but it'll be a day or two before we notice any health impact. Of course, as a state's doctor, what I'm hoping is there isn't going to be a health impact. But people who have asthma, lung disease, heart disease, that's about 3.4 million New Yorkers when you put all that group together. So about 1 every 6 New Yorkers is a vulnerable person. And of course, we add people who are pregnant. You can see really there's quite a few people in New York who are vulnerable. Those people in particular want to be very careful. Of course, if you have asthma, you want to have your inhaler handy, your quick relief inhaler handy. But more importantly, if you have asthma, you want to say, I really shouldn't be outside if I don't need to be. I'm going to stop just right there for a minute, because I really am interested in people's questions and I want to be helpful today. Thank you so much.
And Jeff, maybe I'll reiterate a couple things the governor put out earlier today. For the first time, she has mobilized using emergency cell phone alerts to keep New Yorkers up to date on air quality alerts. So if there's an exceedance of the 200 threshold, which is very unhealthy, for more than an hour, there will be cell phone alerts going out. There's also, as Jim mentioned, the wisdom of using masks. There's, again, governor's team is distributing hundreds of thousands of N95 masks across the state. There's also some additional signage. The regional transit authorities are using signage upstate and downstate to get some of the word out on air quality.
I will open up for questions now. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and then I will unmute. I'll unmute you. And all right, looks like we're going to start with Sarah Darmangian.
Commissioner Segos, can you hear me?
Yes, Sarah.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, you said that there was a crew of 20 that's going to Quebec from the DEC?
It's a 20-person crew, 8 from DEC, and we're leading the crew. The rest of the crew is comprised of Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, as well as FDNY.
Thank you.
Going to go to Nicholas Spangler. Go ahead, Nick.
Two questions. One is, have any of those firefighters who've been up before, have they described to you what it was like fighting the fires? And can you tell us what they said? And two, is there reason to believe that this current smoke event is less dangerous than the first one? Is the smoke more dissipated than it was the first time in June?
So one thing we can certainly do is make some of the audio and or video available from their return a couple days ago. They described in great detail what the conditions were like up north, but I can summarize. Certainly, I mean, you have a record fire event right now in Canada, 18 million acres burning. We sent a crew up to, I think it was a 14-person crew. We had about 9 members, including its leader, on it. We were the first crew on about a 15,000 acre fire. And they described pretty serious conditions. They'd be working one moment in the ground and the fire would take off, run across the canopies and get out of control. And they had to a couple times get evac from a certain fire that they were addressing. A very meaningful few days working in great collaboration with sister states as well as the province itself. Able to make an impact, but we're seeing, very large fires burning across a wide area up there, and it's important for DEC to continue to help as it can.
And as to the thickness of the smoke, is it more dissipated than it was the first time around?
That will certainly right now in New York, Western New York, we're seeing the front edge of the plume coming into the state. You see it dissipated to some degree already in the southern part of the mid-Atlantic states, so down toward Maryland, Washington, D.C. It's too soon to tell what we'll see in Western New York tonight, tomorrow. That's why we put out the advisory, urging New Yorkers to be smart about how they function. We're expecting that unhealthy air, at least for the next 2 days in upstate New York, and the unhealthy for certain populations in southern New York. But we're tracking closely. We've certainly seen what Chicago, Minneapolis, Indianapolis are going through right now. Again, very dirty air, similar to what we had a few weeks ago.
Going to go to Eduardo now.
Hi, Eduardo Guas, USA Today Network, New York. Commissioner Sagos, you had mentioned earlier, that we could expect the plume to move more quickly into the state than it moves out, and that the impacts of the smoke be seen through Friday at the least. But can you walk us through a little bit more on the trends determining that? What are you all seeing? Thank you.
Sure. When it comes to the national weather patterns, we're relying on a much larger monitoring network of how the winds are moving this plume around the state. What we saw in the Midwestern states, Appalachia, is that the smoke came in pretty quickly and then hung around. You see that right now, really in the Chicago area. You see it in Ohio and parts of Pennsylvania, where smoke comes in, sits down along the ground area, and lingers for a bit. The further it goes, the more it dissipates. We expect it again to arrive in New York and have a tougher time moving out, just based on the meteorological conditions we're seeing. We expect that the smoke will begin to dissipate and move out of the state from south to north, starting on Friday. But how quickly some of that coastal air actually cleans the state's air remains to be seen. But that's the trend line we're seeing right now and the experience we're seeing in other states.
We're going to go to Lisa Colangelo next.
Hi, Lisa.
Can you hear me?
We hear
Yeah,
you.
we can hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. Can Dr. McDonald just kind of talk a little bit about when to wear masks, who really should wear them and when, just a little more specifics, because people have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I'd love to. So, keep in mind, part of why an N95 mask is effective is when you see these air quality index numbers, the higher they get, the worse the air is. But the higher the number means, we're really talking about the particulate matter. It says particulate matter, or it says PM 2.5. That just means these are very small particles that get past our nose and into our lungs. And when they settle into our lungs, that can cause inflammation or infection. That's an example of how it can be a problem. With the question, though, is like, when should I wear a mask? Well, hey, when it's red or higher, 151 or higher, everybody should be wearing a mask if they have to go outside. So that's pretty straightforward. 151 or higher, everybody should be wearing a mask. But there's some people who are going to say, gee, at 101 or higher, the yellow zone, if you will, they're going to notice it as well. And this gets to the issue of if you're more sensitive, you're going to want to lower your threshold to wearing a mask. Certainly when it gets above 101, some people who have asthma, heart disease, or others, they're going to be better off if they wear this high quality N95 mask. And the reason for doing that is that some people are more susceptible to poor air quality than others are. So I hope that helps you.
We're going to go to Ed Shanahan next.
A little bit late, so perhaps I missed this. In terms of the health advisory that was in place today through midnight today, has that been extended into tomorrow and/or Friday at this point, or is that are we waiting on that, or what's the? And then I had a separate sort of a separate question as well. What's the deal with the advisory?
So we have an advisory in place today and a new advisory in place for tomorrow, a slightly modified advisory today that we put in place based on changing conditions this morning. We made the decision based on the science that we would push all of the southern part of the state into the orange zone. So in other words, above moderate based on what we were seeing. Tomorrow, again, that's going to continue. I think it was about 3:15 that we put out the announcement about Western New York, Eastern Lake Ontario, Central New York, Adirondacks going into the unhealthy category. In other words, at 151 to 200, and then the rest of the state being as it is today in that unhealthy for sensitive groups category.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I guess that extends through tomorrow midnight, or
tomorrow midnight, correct? And we'll be making assessments tomorrow morning and throughout the morning as to Friday and beyond.
Okay, because you said this, you expect the smoke once it arrives to linger into Friday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. My question, I guess, was about sensitive groups. I guess, can you define that for me? I guess I'm not sure what that is. Does that include children and older people in addition to those who have lung or heart disease? Can you give me a breakdown of that, please?
Yeah, maybe I could approach that if that'd be okay. So when you think about sensitive groups, let's just think about it this way. Children are generally going to fall into sensitive groups. Kids generally breathe faster and have smaller airways. So that's sort of a physics issue, right? In other words, just smaller pipes, a little bit harder for little kids, right? People who are pregnant fall into a smaller group, to a sensitive group as well. You know, anyone who's late trimester of pregnancy, you have a baby pushing on you, it's harder to breathe even when air is great, right? So that's just another group that makes sense. Then the other people that fall into sensitive groups are people with lung disease, asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease are good examples. But people have heart disease, someone who's had heart failure or had a heart attack. And those really do define the sensitive groups. And, you know, when you add that in aggregate, it's about 3.4 million New Yorkers fit into one of those groups. So really about 1 in 6 New Yorkers. So quite a few people fit into those sensitive groups. And it's really important for those people in particular to sort of have that N95 mask. And I think in particular, it's like when we get into that orange category, 101 or higher, when you get to that orange category, that's when I don my N95 mask if I was in a sensitive group, if I had to go outside. Because if you're in that sensitive group, my advice is let's stay inside. Then you avoid the triggering of your asthma or the delayed effect in a couple days of your heart being affected. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just to clarify, older people without heart disease or lung disease, are they, I mean, young people, children, that makes sense to me. I would assume that older people, even without those kinds of conditions, would be in that category, but should they be also considering themselves to be sensitive?
Well, people who are 65 or older do need to look at their personal health risk. And you know, many people do fall in the group, but being older does put you into an area where you're going to be often more sensitive. And so that's another group that wants to be very cautious about what our adverse air looks like. Hopefully this will clear up in a day or two. I don't know that any of us can really, predict that, but the event we had June 7th was short-lived, only for 2 days. So we did pretty well, but keep in mind, the weather just changed. It wasn't like we did anything to make the air better. It just got better. So, I don't know how long this is going to last for.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Patrick Tyne next.
Yeah, great. Obviously, I know these events have been measured in hours and days in terms of how far you're looking ahead, but are we maybe looking at a new normal? Like, what are the chances we're going to be having similar conversations like this, in August? Like, and is that entering into, DEC or DOH's kind of planning for the rest of the summer in terms of like time and resources you can devote to this? Because obviously the fires aren't going to stop. So you would think that we're going to have these 2 or 3 day or perhaps longer periods where this is going to be kind of acute across the state. So could you just get into that a little bit more, just about what the longer term plan is and what you're anticipating? Thanks.
Well, I can say that we always plan for the worst. 4 weeks ago, we were looking at a very dry New York State, not just concerns about Canada, but concerns about our own state and potential fire risk. We were putting out notice after notice of the fire risk all across upstate New York. That's changed. We got an enormous amount of rain the last few weeks. So we're now out of that category. My point is, in Canada, even though they have these widespread fires, conditions can change quickly. So, we're planning for a long duration event. The governor said that in the early part of this month, saying that this is something that will reemerge again because the fires haven't stopped. They are burning quite broadly at this point. But again, conditions could change. We do have the resources necessary to keep at this. We will continue sending crews up to the extent that Canada requests them. We'll continue putting out alerts as we always do. And we would, of course, urge the public to listen to the Gov's social media, Gov's pronouncements, the things that we put out every day as to best practices moving forward.
I could just build on that. I do think we need to prepare for this to be something that we deal with, right? So this is part of why I think every day, do like I do and look at your air quality so you know what you're getting into. And I think, make sure you have an N95 at home. I think if you do those two things, those are two important things. But we at the New York State Department of Health are preparing for this to be something that we do. We do syndromic surveillance anyways, looking for adverse health effects for this, but many other things. But we're prepared for this, and we're well staffed to address this for the long run because we think this is something that is a product of climate change. And it's something that we just need to sort of say, look, how are we going to live with this? Obviously, we'd love the wildfires in Canada to stop, but really what we need to do is just sort of like look at what's going on here and be prepared.
Does anyone else have any questions? There are no other hands raised and nothing in the chat. So I'll give them another few seconds, see if anyone else raises hand. If not, either commissioner, do you have anything else you wanted to add? Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
No more to add from my end. Again, please continue to follow airnow.gov. Keep following us on social, and we'll be as early and often on our assessments, our forecasts as possible.
The only thing I'd like to add is, this is a chance for us to look at our personal health and wellness. If you're someone who's a smoker, you'd be better off quit smoking. And that's something I think people should look at is like, what can I do to improve my personal health and well-being? That's one other thing people can do. Thank you so much. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll get you
Thanks,
a copy of this as soon as possible.